All right. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the Ann Arbor Real Estate Investors Club. Today's session is called Money 101. Learn how to fund your real estate deals. And for those of you who might be new to the call or new to the group, um, this is what I offer. The Ann Arbor Real Estate Investors Club, I've been doing it for 16 years, and I've honed it down to these three main um, purposes for learning something new at every session, networking, which is, the bread and butter of any real estate investor, they will tell you. And then the opportunity to do deals among members of the group, which seems to be happening more and more often as time goes on. So anyway, that's what we're about. I do these Fundamental Fridays sessions. It's a series of 12 sessions on what I consider to be the fundamental topics of real estate investing. And these topics, this list is a list that I've created based on my 21 years of experience as a real estate investor and a realtor and being in the business, every day, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. So I kind of, chunked them down, and I do, you know, pretty much, one topic per session. And again, it's a 10,000 foot overview. So the last few weeks, those of you who have been on the call, who have been along for the ride, I've done a planning session, a session on finding deals, analyzing deals, and today is funding deals. Negotiating next week, and then you see the list here will be covered in subsequent sessions. So stay tuned to the meetup for when those are scheduled. Um, Today's objectives. I'm going to talk about money, really a global view of money and you personally, and an overview of money and real estate, a real high level one. I'm going to talk a little bit about leverage because again, leverage is something that you don't know about until you know about it, and really know about it. And then I'm gonna break out different types of financing for real estate. And again, it's really fundamental. Perhaps you've heard of these terms before and these types of financing before. If you have, it's a good little refresher. If you haven't, then you're learning something new. And then I'm going to give you connections to lenders who are members of the group and who, usually attend our events. They're not on the call today. You know, they don't typically do Zoom classes, but I can connect you with lenders in the group who are, not only lenders, but I'll talk about them a little bit more. Where the lenders that I connect with and that are in my network are like educating lenders, and they act, and I kind of insist that they act more as partners than just lenders, and I'll explain that out when we get there in the slides. All right, so financial planning 101. This is the start. You should, if you don't already, create what's called a net worth sheet, which defines your net worth. All right. Now, why do you do this and why is it important? Well, number one, when you see it on paper, it's pretty stark in black and white. And number two, you use it as a scorecard. Okay, this is what you're going to build over time in your real estate investing business. Your goal is to increase your net worth. And so it's important for those reasons as your personal scorecard But it's also very important as you start to engage with lenders. Lenders are going to want to know your net worth and what assets you hold and what liabilities you have. Therefore, they can assess what risk they are taking in loaning you money. And so you need to have these documents. And so now is as good a time as any to start. But again, the value is there. It's your personal scorecard. It's part of your goals, and you are going to need it when you start engaging with lenders. And as you engage with lenders throughout your whole real estate investing career, et cetera. So create your net worth sheet, which I call point A. It's like if you're buying a business or managing a business, you go in the first of the month and you take inventory. You take inventory of what you have, and you put it on paper and you assign a value to it. All right. Point B is your goals, and kind of obviously everybody, this is a flowing, moving target. So you want to write your goals. And I'm a big advocate, and those of you who listen to me often know that I beat the drum about having a 1 year goal, a 3 year goal, a 5 year goal, a 10 year goal, a 20 year goal. All right. So you can have focus on point B, where you want to go in your journey. All right. That's the idea: short term, midterm, long term. Then, you reverse engineer it back down to today. What am I going to do today to get to those goals? And the clearer they are, the clearer you make them, kind of the more likely you are to take action on them, and the more likely you are to not get discouraged when you get off track. All right. Then, I advocate ranking your goals by priority. I'm not going to go into a whole planning session or a goal setting session. You can do that on your own, or that is part of the planning session that I did a few weeks ago. But then the idea is to assign dollars to each of your goals. And the goals can be anything from, total net worth to cash flow per month to appreciation of assets, whatever those numbers shake out to be, you know, get them on paper. And once you have point A and point B, you're going to create a smart, I call it a smart, it is called, I'm not the only one, I didn't invent the term, a smart plan, plan that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based to execute your plan to achieve your goals. All right. So for financial planning, and to do a deeper dive and to do this, relatively easily, here are a few resources I suggest that you start to utilize. They're really valuable. I'm a big fan of Experian. I've used these other ones in the past, and they're all great. I mean, these are like any apps or any tools. The best ones are the ones that you will use. And I happen to like Experian right now, but I encourage you to, you know, start thinking about money management and goal setting with your money, and creating your net worth sheet, and which is your scorecard, by utilizing these tools. So these are just some examples. All right. Um, Money overview. Okay, how banks and lenders make money. Well, this is another topic that you don't think about it until you think about it. But obviously, The banks make money by loaning out money and getting the interest payments. And, we can talk about penalties and late fees and service charges and all that other fun stuff. But it's basically banks or lenders lend out money at a certain interest rate, and the more that they lend out means the more that they can borrow from other larger institutions. And it's really very, very simple. They make money on the spread from the money that they borrow to the money that they lend out. And they make money on that spread. And that's how any of these lenders I'm going to talk about, that's how they do it. It's a very simple equation. There's a lot of things in the financial industry, in my opinion, I'm going to editorialize here for a second, that people have a tendency to try and explain it to you and make it more complicated than it is, because they want you to rely on them to handle all of that stuff. So it's really, in my opinion, it's a very simple concept. All right. And but that's how it works. That's how they make money. I'm going to talk to you a little bit, and I've got another resource for a book where you can become a lender. Okay, you can be the bank or you can be the lender. That's all part of this Money 101 session. I'm going to talk about leverage, which is, basically, the difference between what you're paying and what you're receiving. That's leverage. And banks, the basic formula for banks is, if you deposit, this is the concept of leverage for a bank. If you deposit $100,000 cash into a bank, okay, that means the bank has leverage, and the bank can use that $100,000 cash, which is your money. Okay, they can use that, and they can borrow 10 times that. So they can borrow $1 million from an institution or from the Fed or whatever, meaning they can lend out $1 million based on the 100,000 that you have deposited. All right. That's the whole concept in a real nutshell, in a real simple nutshell. And so that's how banks work, and that's how lenders work. There's a book I recommend. I've got a slide of it at the end. It's a book by Frank Gallinelli. It's called What Every Investor Needs to Know About Cash Flow. It's a reference book. Jot it down. I'll give you a chance at the end. I'll remind you of it at the end. But that's a great book that is pretty specific to real estate, but it's a good reference manual, and it tells you about all these different terms and formulas and which ones are used when and where and why and by who and all of that fun stuff. So that's what you need to know about how money works. It's pretty simple. Types of financing for real estate investing. Okay, cash is king. That's the beginning and the end of it. That, if you are trying to finance a deal, and you're there are multiple offers on the deal, yet one or more of the offers are cash, and your offer involves a financing contingency, 9 times out of 10, not 10 times out of 10, because there are other circumstances that come into play, but 9 times out of 10, a seller will accept a cash offer, even if it's less than a financed offer. And that's simply due to the fact is that the offer is cleaner. There's no third party involved in the transaction, other than the realtors, but there's no financing third party involved in the transaction. So It's buyer, seller, realtor, title company. Boom, 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 boom. Let's get it done. So that's a something that you will need to know as a buyer. If you are not a cash buyer, you have to know that you're going to have to find a way to try to compete with cash offers, which we could talk about a little bit more next week in negotiating. But ultimately, as a seller, you will have to deal with it on the other side of the transaction. Are you, because typically the cash offers, it depends on the market and the property and the location and some other variables. But generally, the cash offers are lower than the asking price or potentially lower than the other offers. But that's the advantage to the buyer. It incentivizes the seller that it's a clean deal and they can get done with it and get on with their lives rather than drag it out and have the potential for problems to happen down the road. So know it as a buyer, and I mean, if you're a buyer, you're kind of the king in a multiple offer situation. um, and that's kind of what you want to aspire to. And there's an option down the bullets here that is almost equivalent to cash, which I'll talk about, which gives you a lot more leverage, but you're typically not going to get there until you're at a particular scale with your business. So cash is king, period. Um, Next is conventional loans, which are from, and I break this out into big banks, local banks, mortgage companies, credit unions. And That's how I break this out. And again, it's been my experience that if you are, that there are better opportunities with conventional loans with real estate investors, typically if you work with a credit union or a local lender rather than a big bank like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all those. That's not to say you don't want to do that. And, certainly do that if you have a long-term relationship with them. They don't want to lose you. But if you're just starting out, we talk about planning and starting a business and starting an LLC and opening a bank account and all that stuff. I encourage you to, interview different banks, but focus on, local banks like Bank of Ann Arbor, if you're local in Ann Arbor, or Old National Bank. Those are good and very active, and very savvy, and very, I won't say very flexible, but more flexible than other banks in working with investors. So that's how you want to break it out. Um, Private loans. We have private lenders. There were 5 private lenders at our meetup a couple weeks ago, at our Rainmakers group. So these are private lenders that each of them is a little bit different. You can kind of think of them each as a bank or a different kind of banker, and they each have their own limits. They each have their own requirements. They each have their own programs and terms and all of that fun stuff. But I encourage you at this stage of your career, um, to get acquainted with them, to, you know, meet them, introduce yourself to them, connect with them, share your goals with them. And like I said at the top, the guys and girls who are private lenders, or who are part of our group, I kind of, my requirement is that they act as a partner. And let me explain this, and this is a real important point, especially when I start talking about hard money loans in a couple bullets down. All right. Hard money lenders are lenders. There are tons of them out there. I don't know, I get probably 5 emails a day from hard money lenders wanting to do business. And the difference between hard money lenders and the lenders in our group that I use and recommend to other members of the group is that they don't care if you make money or don't make money on the deal. All right. What they are interested in is getting paid back. Um, and I use the horror story of a member of this group who, he didn't want to use one of the lenders in our group because their rates were just a tad higher than this other lender that he found out of California. And he went with this lender out of California because he could save a couple dollars. And he thought it was his first time doing it. He thought he was comparing apples to apples. Well, oh, there I'm going to save a couple $1,000s or whatever it was. So I'm going to go with them. Well, now this was an unusual circumstance, but this happened, and then COVID hit, and then we went into lockdown, and then the worst of the worst scenario happened. And the hard money lender had no empathy, or um, and kept hounding him for the payments. And it completely stressed him out and kind of ultimately was the beginning of the end for him in the business. But the moral of the story is these lenders, Yoav, John, Bob, Leon, Lisa is another one, who are members of the group. They want to be, they want long-term relationships with investors, okay? Because they don't want a one and done. They want to do deals with you kind of on a lifetime business, or as long as you're in the business. And the only way they can do that is if you are successful. So they will look at the deal, and instead of looking at, your personal collateral or this and that, they will look at the deal. They'll act as a partner, and they'll say, Raj or Brent, you look at this or you didn't look at that. They will act as a partner and a second set of eyes, and they won't loan you the money if they don't think that you can be successful with the deal. That's the huge difference. So when you're doing real estate investing, one of the main people on your power team is going to be your lender. Now, you're not always going to use one lender. You might, but especially in the case of these private lenders, like a couple on this list, a couple of them use their own money. Others, use leverage where they have access to money where they can borrow and again lend it to you at a higher rate than they're paying off, and they make the profit on the spread the same way the banks do. All right. But a couple of these private lenders, they'll come to a meeting sometime and will say, what's going on? He said, well, I've got this and this going on, and I'm fully deployed right at the moment, meaning that they've maxed out on the funds that they're able to lend on. Now, they may be your preferred lender, but if you have a deal going, time is money. You can't wait. You can't wait for them to, free up some of their assets. You've got to go. So that's where you build your power team, and you have your primary lender and your backup lender, and building bench strength, as we call it when I do the power team session. All right. So that's that. And then I covered hard money loans. Hard money loans are out there. The private loans and hard money loans are usually short term, and when we say short term, it's like anywhere from a week to a year. Typically, these private lenders or hard money lenders um, don't want to loan you money for longer than a year. And likewise, the conventional lenders don't want to loan you money for the short term because it's higher risk and they just don't want to get involved with it. So, this is the key component of the BRRRR strategy that we talk about, where you buy a property using your own money or using hard money or private money. You rehab the property using your own money, hard money, private money. You get a rental in there, all right, and then you do a refinance. So when you're ready to do the refinance, that's when you talk to the conventional lender. That's when you go to your credit union or Old National Bank or Bank of Ann Arbor or Chase or whomever you or whatever lender you go to, okay? And then you're going to refinance out into a longer term loan where you've got the tenant paying covering your mortgage. That's the essence of the BRRRR strategy is you use private money, hard money, and your own money for the short term, getting the property bought, rehabbed, rented, and seasoned, and then you get the passive income from it after you refinance with the big bank, ideally at a lower interest rate. We're not there today as of January 24th, but we'll get back there. Um, Private loans, you can also, Uncle Bob or Uncle Joe, family and friends who have a pretty substantial portfolio might be willing to loan you some money, um, uh, you know, as an investment for them. Um, Lines of credit. This is where you have a growing net worth, you have a track record, you have a relationship with the bank of loans and paying back and appreciating assets and all that. That's when that's when your bank will give you a line of credit, that's at an interest rate that's substantially less than you would pay a private lender or a hard money lender. So the line of credit is what you use for the short term loan. Okay. And then again, you do the refinance, you pay off your line of credit, and you've got the long term loan with the tenant paying it off. All right. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. A little bit of a fire hose today, especially if you're unfamiliar at all with these concepts. Business and commercial loans, that's next level where you have multiple properties, um, and you want to refinance it into a package. Um, those that the business and commercial loans is a topic that's beyond my scope of an ability to teach, and that's why I mention it here. But this is for when you get, this is next level. This is not only next level. This is like two levels up at least from where you're starting out, or maybe starting out today. All right. Um, Getting started, I invite you to, go back to those online tools I suggested. Experian, Mint, Every Dollar, whatever bank you have I'm sure they have a very robust, website back end that is similar to Experian, Mint, and Every Dollar, where you can do planning and all that fun stuff. Um, you know pretty much every bank has something similar. um, get familiar with those tools. um, and utilize it, because again, you're going to need a snapshot of where you are and where you want to go. All right. For yourself, for your goals, and for any lenders you're going to start building relationships with. Um, Talk to lenders, okay? And again, I encourage you all, real estate investors, start with your own bank where you have money right now. That's the best starting point now, because you're already doing business with the bank, okay? So, you can make a call or walk in off the street and say, hey, I'm Brian Bundison. I'm launching or I'm expanding, or I'm launching my real estate investing business. Can we have a cup of coffee? And yeah, again, they would love to do that because that's what they do. And you will, I guarantee, if you the more you keep your ears open and your mouth shut, the more you will learn. And you will learn from every institution, from every person you talk to, from every interaction that you have. You will learn a little bit more. And that's what it's all about, is learning a little bit more each day. You can come to our Rainmakers group, which is February 6th. And there will be, usually anywhere from like 2 to 5 lenders at the table on any given Tuesday. And as I said, they're all a little bit different. They each have a little bit different personalities, approaches to business, programs, that they offer, types of property and types of deals that they will lend on and won't lend on. But again, if you think of them as a partner, not that you go into a bank and you talk to the banker, you're interviewing the banker, you know what I mean? The banker may or may not take an interest in the deals you do, the specific deals you do. Um, but these private lenders that you build a relationship, they're individuals and they're people and they're flesh and blood. They want to see you succeed. They want more business. If you succeed, perhaps you'll refer them business. Perhaps they are in a position to refer deals to you, and vice versa. You get that networking aspect with the private lenders that you don't get with, the Chase banks and even the local banks. They're there, you're there as a customer and they're there as a provider. And that's the relationship, period. You come to our group with the private lenders, it's a different dynamic and it's a different type of relationship that's, again, more of a partnership and designed to be a long-term, mutually successful um, relationship. So I really emphasize that, and I really encourage you to get your mind, wrapped around that concept when it comes to the private lenders versus the conventional lenders. And that's it. So your financial planning worksheet, that's your homework. Start to explore the online tools that if you have a bank, you already have access to. And they might be, the tool that your bank has, I, I have accounts at a few different banks. Um, their platform might be every bit as good as Experian, for all I know. I haven't really delved into my own bank's platform, um, because I happen to like Experian, and I happen to like a third party platform. I mean, it's like anything online. If I get buried in utilizing the Chase platform, and then all of a sudden I don't want to do business with Chase anymore, I want to go to a different bank. Well, it's harder to transfer. It's like, your email, that your email provider. You get the idea on that. All right. Um, I don't have a cheat sheet with these numbers, so you can jot these down, and I'll take a quick sip of coffee and invite you to jot these numbers down. And any of these would be open to a phone call if you call them up and you don't know them and they don't know you. But if you call them up and you say, "Hey, Joe, Brian gave me your number and said that you and I should talk," he will take your call and he'd be more than happy to talk. And Joe will talk. And Joe is one of the sharpest knives in the drawer. He is a conventional lender with Mortgage One, but he does, I mean, I don't know, it's certainly more than half his business working with investors. And he's very creative, and he's very sharp and a very good guy to know. Yoav owns a company called Green Block, which is a private lender. He's very active in our group. Leon is also has access to funds, but he is also a wholesaler. He also works for an investor-friendly title company. John Stinson, also very, he's been in the business close to 40 years as a private lender, and also a very knowledgeable guy willing to share his experience and knowledge and advice. And, you know, good guys to know, good guys to add to your power team. And adding to your power team is, again, one of the fundamental building blocks of your real estate investment journey. So, but even if you don't call these guys, again, I encourage you to grasp the concept of it, of educating yourself more on the money piece of it, starting with your own bank, starting with the uh, those websites I talked about. I'm going to give you some other resources here, and here's some additional websites. Um, Bigger Pockets, if you're not familiar with it, you should be familiar with it. Tons of resources and information there on lenders and et cetera. REI Club is another good resource. Investopedia, a good resource for learning, a little bit dry, but it's valuable. Realdata.com is another one. I also encourage you to, if you want, I'll add it to this site here, there's an organization called the American Association of Private Lenders. So like any trade organization, every industry has got a trade association, where people are members, and they have moral codes and ethics and trainings and resources and all that. I think it's aapl.org. But I encourage you to check out their website and the resources they have and the articles. You can get lost. You can get lost on any of these websites. But I encourage you to get familiar with private lenders and the private lending industry. In addition just to the traditional finance and banking industry, because the private lending industry, yeah, it certainly works for business, but it's obviously very huge in real estate investing. So, like anything, the more you know about it, and the more you can learn about it, the better off you are. These are the books I was talking about. The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. What every real estate investor needs to know about cash flow. And Who Needs the Bank by Bob Zachmeyer. That is like about fourth level up. But I encourage you to cash in some of your Amazon Prime points, and go to Amazon right after you get off this call and order these books. And then read the books, 10 pages a day is a chewable, digestible amount of information. Um, I encourage you to do that because, again, learning, networking, deal making is what we're about. This is the learning piece of it. I've been in the business 21 years and I'm still like a sponge. I'm learning every day. I'm trying to learn more every day. And it's like anything. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And the more you learn, the more you realize that you need to learn. So that's kind of one of my wrap up for this session. Um, Again, to recap, if you came on the call a little bit later, um, Ann Arbor Real Estate Investors Club. I'm doing these Fundamental Fridays. I think I'm on session 4 of 12. MLS deal search. If you're closer to ready to buy, I can set you up on a specific search based on your parameters. We can talk about that offline. The Rainmaker session is where off-market deals happen. Raj, I don't know if you're interested in investing in Southeast Michigan, but most of the deals are Michigan based. But you never know. There's been people at the table that are doing deals in St. Louis and Florida and Seattle. So you never know who will be there or what will bubble up. Power team building. I do a complete session on power team building, which is like assembling a football team, just like the team that plays at the big house. Um, and deal making, off market deals that don't see the light of day and don't have a lot of competition, but deals get done because buyers and sellers want to get together and do a deal quickly. And if a deal makes sense to both parties, it can be done involving without involving the whole world. Um, Next steps: continue to engage with the group. I also equate the Ann Arbor Real Estate Investors Club with like the gym or a church. You can join the gym or join a church, but if you don't go, and do what they tell you to do, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's the same concept. Commit to yourself, take action every day, read 10 pages a day. If you've been we're in the analysis class, I encourage you to analyze one deal a day. If you analyze one deal a day, in a year from today, you will have analyzed 365 deals and will be a master at analyzing deals. I'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one on Zoom if you're not local, or in person if you are local. Hopefully it's going to warm up next week, but that doesn't stop us anyway. That's it. You guys know, or if you've read on the descriptions, I don't have a real strict fee per session or things like that, because I want you to find value in the group, and I really work hard to deliver value. And I do feel that if I deliver value, I should be compensated. So if you find value, and you want to be an engaged member of the group, I encourage you to do so. So uh, we can talk more about that at another time or one-on-one. That is all that I have for today. So I'm going to stop this share, stop the record.